Have you ever stopped to think that there's a specific day on the calendar, a date you can calculate right now, when working stops being an obligation and becomes a choice? While most people will trade 40 years of their life for a salary, hoping to reach 65 with aching knees and a retirement that barely pays the bills, there's a small group of people who discovered something different. They discovered the exact moment when their money starts generating more wealth than they can produce by working. And when that moment arrives, everything changes. The morning alarm stops being an obligation. That annoying boss loses power over you. That job that drains your soul every day, you can leave whenever you want because your investments are paying your bills. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is for rich people, for those who inherited money, or for those who got lucky. Wrong. This is pure mathematics. And if you earn a regular salary and understand how the game works, you can reach that moment decades earlier than you imagine. The problem is that nobody taught you this. Nobody showed you that there's a mathematical crossing point between your expenses and your passive income. And when those two lines meet, when the money you've invested is generating more than you spend, you've conquered something that 95% of people will never experience. You've conquered real freedom. Not the freedom to buy things, the freedom to choose how to spend your days. Stay with me until the end of this video because I'm going to show you exactly how to calculate when that moment will happen in your life. I'm going to show you the real numbers, the strategies that can cut decades from your journey, and the cost of every financial decision you make. By the end, you'll know the exact day when work becomes optional for you. And more importantly, you'll know exactly what to do from now on so that day arrives as quickly as possible. So let's go. There's a moment in a person's financial life that most never experience, and many don't even know exists. It's that instant when you realize your money is generating more wealth than you can produce by working. Imagine waking up and discovering that while you were sleeping, your investments grew more than your daily salary. Winning the lottery or receiving an unexpected inheritance plays its role for some. But we're talking here about a transformation that happens when you understand the rules of the financial game. Most people spend decades trading time for money without realizing there's a mathematics operating behind the scenes of wealth building. This moment has a name, and when you reach it, your relationship with work changes completely. The crossover point is a mathematical reality that can be calculated with precision. Think of it as two lines on a graph representing your financial life. The first line shows your monthly expenses, everything you need to live with dignity and comfort. The second line represents your passive income, the money your investments generate without you needing to show up at an office. At the beginning of the journey, these lines are far apart. Your passive income is practically at zero while your expenses are substantial. But something fascinating happens when you invest consistently over time. That passive income line starts to rise, slowly at first, but with an acceleration that surprises even those who understand compound interest. The moment when those two lines cross is when you conquer something rare, the freedom to choose whether or not you want to work. The vast majority of people work 40 years or more without ever witnessing that crossing. They wake up every day, face traffic, put in their 8 hours or more of work, and return home hoping that at the end of life there will be enough money to survive. What they don't realize is that there's a specific date on the calendar. A day that can be predicted and even anticipated, when everything changes. Here, I'm not talking about retirement at 65 with a modest pension. I'm talking about creating a system where your portfolio works as hard as you do, and eventually works even harder. When you understand this, every dollar you earn takes on a different meaning. And the most interesting part is that, in many cases, people have much more control over when that moment arrives than they imagine. Many people look at the idea of financial independence and think it's something reserved for millionaire entrepreneurs or those who inherited fortunes. But the mathematical truth is different. If you earn an average salary and understand how money works, you can reach the crossover point decades before traditional retirement. The difference lies in understanding that you're not just saving, you're building a machine that will eventually sustain you. Every investment you make is like adding a small worker to your team, someone who generates income while you sleep, travel, or spend time with those you love. As the years pass, you no longer have just a few invisible workers, you have an army of them. And when that army generates enough income to cover all your expenses, you've achieved something very few people experience. What makes the crossover point so powerful is its precision. And look, My point here isn't about some vague philosophy of abundance or positive mindset. I'm talking about numbers you can calculate today. You know exactly how much you need to have invested, you know exactly how much you need to save per month, and you can predict with reasonable precision when the lines will cross. This transforms a journey that seems impossible into a series of milestones. You're no longer chasing a nebulous dream of financial freedom. You're executing a plan with a defined destination. And when you know where you're going, every financial decision becomes clearer. That impulsive purchase that seemed harmless? You realize you're pushing your crossover point a few months further. That salary increase you negotiated? You know exactly how many years it took off your journey to independence. The fascinating thing about all this is that the crossover point isn't just about money. It's about time. Time is the only truly scarce resource we have. You can earn more money, but you can't manufacture more time. When you understand that you're building a system that will give back your time, the motivation to keep investing becomes much deeper than simply wanting to be rich. You're literally buying back years of your life, years in which you can choose how to spend your mornings, who to spend your afternoons with, and what to do with your nights. And the best part? You don't need to wait until the complete crossing to start feeling the benefits. Each month that passes, each milestone you reach in your portfolio's growth, you become a little freer, a little less dependent, a little closer to a life where your choices are truly yours. The beauty of the crossover point lies in the numbers you can calculate right now. Let's talk about mathematics, the kind that transforms vague dreams into executable plans. Let's say your monthly expenses are $4,000, which means $48,000 a year to maintain your lifestyle. There's a widely accepted rule in the investment world called the 4% rule, which says you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually in a sustainable way for the rest of your life. Working the math backwards, you would need $1,200,000 invested to generate those $48,000 per year through passive income. That's your magic number, the portfolio size that would make work optional for you. Seems distant? Let's see how much closer you really are than you imagine. Imagine you're 30 years old and earn $60,000 a year. You decide to invest $500 a month, about 10% of your income, in an index fund that historically returns 8% annually. Let's follow this journey decade by decade. At 40 years old, after 10 years of consistent investing, you would have about $91,000. Applying the 4% rule, this would generate approximately $300 per month of passive income. Still far from the $4,000 you need, right? The investment income line is still well below the expense line. At 50, after 20 years of discipline, your portfolio would reach $275,000, generating about $900 monthly. The gap is shrinking, you can feel the momentum growing. This is where compound interest starts to show its true power. At 55, 25 years after starting, you would have $430,000 invested. Your passive income would now be approximately $1,400 per month. You're generating more than a third of your expenses without lifting a finger. With each passing month, that paycheck becomes a little less critical to your survival. At 60, 3 decades after taking the first step, your portfolio would be worth $670,000, producing more than $2,000 monthly. You're generating half your expenses through your investments. The complete crossover would happen around 65, exactly at traditional retirement age. You invested modestly, waited patiently, and reached the destination most people never reach. Now you might be thinking that reaching 65 with financial independence is good, better than the alternative of depending only on Social Security. And you're absolutely right. However, there's something crucial I need to show you about this mathematics. The crossover point has two variables you completely control: the size of your portfolio and your expense level. Most people focus only on increasing the portfolio, forgetting that reducing expenses moves the finish line much closer. If you can live on $3,000 a month instead of $4,000, your independence number drops from $1,200,000 to $900,000. You just eliminated $300,000 from the goal, which represents approximately 7 fewer years of work in the scenario I described. And here's the detail that changes everything. When you reduce your expenses, you free up more money to invest. If your expenses drop from $4,000 to $3,000 per month, and you were investing $500, now you can invest $1,500. Let's redo the calculations with these new numbers. Investing $1,000 per month for 25 years at 8% return, you would accumulate $860,000. With the new goal of $900,000, you would cross the financial independence line at 55, a full decade before the original scenario. You bought back 10 years of your life simply by optimizing two aspects of the equation. And if you want to go even further, let's say you completely eliminate housing payments through strategies like sharing an apartment or living in a property you partially rent out. Your expenses drop to $2,000 monthly, your crossover number is now $600,000, and investing $1,000 per month, you would get there in approximately 18 years. You could be financially independent in your late 40s, with decades of a certain degree of freedom ahead. What I'm trying to show here goes beyond projections. It's about understanding that you have certain leverage over your own timeline. The crossover point stops being a fixed and distant destination when you realize you can pull it closer by attacking both sides of the equation. Every $100 you cut from monthly expenses reduces your independence number by $30,000. Every extra $1,000 you invest dramatically accelerates your portfolio's growth curve. Look, there's something that happens in your mind when you start investing that most people never tell you about. At the beginning, every dollar you put in the market feels like a painful sacrifice. You're giving up tangible things, dinners out, new clothes, that gadget everyone's buying, in exchange for abstract numbers on a screen. Your portfolio goes up $30 one day and drops $50 the next. The crossover point seems so distant you can't even visualize it properly. Honestly, this initial phase is challenging. You're planting seeds in soil that seems infertile, waiting for a harvest that could take decades. The gratification is far off in the future, while the temptation to spend is here, now, knocking on your door every day. It's easy to give up at this stage because the results seem too insignificant to justify the effort. Something changes when your portfolio reaches a certain size. For many people, this psychological inflection point happens somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 invested. Suddenly, your investments gain weight, they become real in a way they weren't before. A 2% gain no longer represents a few dollars you barely notice. You begin to viscerally feel the power of compound interest. That money you invested years ago is working for you, generating returns, and those returns are generating more returns. It's as if you hired an employee who never takes vacation, never complains, and becomes increasingly productive over time. And the more this employee produces, the easier it becomes to keep investing because you see evidence that the system works. Your relationship with work begins to transform long before you cross the final line of financial independence. There's a concept I call the freedom gradient that perfectly illustrates this phenomenon. Most think of financial independence as something binary: you're either stuck at your job or you're free. Reality is much more nuanced than that. When your investments generate $500 per month, you've covered your car payment passively. When they reach $1,000 monthly, you're covering transportation and food without working for them. At $2,000, practically all your non-housing expenses are paid by your portfolio. Each of these milestones gives you more negotiating power, more ability to say no to things you don't want to do, and more room to breathe. You don't need to wait until the complete crossover to start living differently. There's a term used in circles of people seeking financial independence called coast fire that perfectly exemplifies how freedom comes in layers. Coast fire is the point where you've already invested enough so that even if you never add another single dollar, compound interest alone will grow your portfolio to the number needed for traditional retirement. Let's do the math to understand. Let's say you're 30 and want to have $1,200,000 at 60, 30 years in the future. At 8% annual return, working the math backwards, you would need approximately $150,000 invested today to guarantee you'll get there without contributing anything more. If you're a 30-year-old with $150,000 already invested, congratulations, you've reached coast fire. Theoretically, you could switch to a job that pays less, work part-time, or use the money you were investing for other experiences. Your retirement is already mathematically guaranteed. You've punched your ticket. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending you stop investing as soon as you reach coast fire. Continuing to invest aggressively obviously gets you to complete independence much faster and gives you a margin of safety for unexpected events. The point here is to show how the crossover point creates options long before you get there completely. When you understand you've already secured your financial future, even if only at traditional retirement age, it changes how you feel in the present. That stressful job becomes a bit more bearable because you know you're choosing to stay there, not trapped by absolute necessity. You can take more career risks, pursue jobs that fulfill you even if they pay less, or dedicate time to side projects without the desperation of needing them to work out immediately. Freedom doesn't arrive all at once on the day you reach financial independence. It gradually increases, giving you more and more control over your life with each milestone you conquer. A 2022 survey revealed that 57% of Americans believe they'll never be able to retire comfortably. What strikes me about this number is that most of these people have never calculated their crossover point. They've never sat down to do the math and discover exactly how much they need, how long it will take, and what actions can accelerate the journey. They're just vaguely worried about an undefined future, which is psychologically paralyzing in a way that having a specific target simply isn't. When you have a clear number, when you know you need to reach 900,000 or 1,200,000, and when you know you're 15 or 20 years away, everything changes. You're no longer anxious about the unknown. You're executing a plan. And every financial decision you make, from that $5 coffee to the choice of car you drive, starts making sense within a larger context. You know if you're moving toward the crossover or away from it. This clarity transforms an abstract worry into a game you can win. Let me tell you something that completely changed how I see every purchase I make. Every time you spend money, you're making two simultaneous transactions, even if you only perceive one of them. The first transaction is obvious, you're trading money for something, a car, a dinner, a pair of sneakers. The second transaction is invisible to most people, you're trading future freedom time for present pleasure. When you buy a $30,000 car instead of a $15,000 one, you think you spent $15,000 more. That's the superficial math everyone does. The real math, the one that changes your life when you understand it, is much deeper. Those $15,000 invested at 8% return double approximately every 9 years. In 9 years, that car upgrade costs $30,000. In 18 years, $60,000. In 27 years, $120,000. You didn't buy a better car, you sold months or years of your future life. Here's what I want you to do with this information, because understanding the crossover point without acting is completely useless. First, you need to know exactly how much you spend per month. And when I say exactly, I'm not talking about the number you think you spend. Take the last 3 months of bank statements and add everything up. Count every subscription you forgot you have, every impulsive purchase at the supermarket, every dinner that seemed cheap at the time. Most people discover they're spending 15% to 20% more than they imagined. This is your starting point, the naked reality of how much it costs to maintain your current life. Multiply that monthly number by 12 to get your annual expenses. Now multiply by 25. That's your crossover number using the 4% rule. Write that number down somewhere. Look at it. That's the amount of invested money that would make work optional for you. Third step, check how much you have invested now. Could be 0, it could be 10,000, it could be 100,000. The number doesn't matter as much as the honesty of knowing where you are. Subtract what you have from your crossover number. That difference is your gap, the distance between where you are today and financial independence. Fourth step, calculate how many years it will take to close that gap based on how much you're currently investing per month. There are online calculators for this, or you can use compound interest formulas if you like math. Be honest about how much you're really putting aside every month. If you invested $200 in January, 0 in February, and $500 in March, your average isn't 233. Your average is 0 because you're not being consistent, and consistency is everything in this game. Now comes the part where you really win or lose this journey. Fifth step, ask yourself how you can accelerate this timeline. Can you increase your income through a job change? Is there room to negotiate a raise? Do you have skills that could generate side income on weekends? On the expense side, could you share housing with someone or move to a cheaper area? Are there vampire expenses sucking your money every month that you don't even notice anymore? Those $15 for Netflix, $20 for Spotify, $12 for the new subscription you forgot you have. Add it all up and you discover you're bleeding $100 a month on things that add nothing to your life. And here's the kicker. Every $1,000 you invest generates $40 per year of passive income forever. Every $100 you cut from monthly expenses reduces by $30,000 how much you need for the crossover. These numbers are levers you can pull right now. There's another thing about the cost of choices that people rarely consider. When you receive a bonus at work, a tax refund, or an unexpected inheritance, you have a decision to make. The temptation is to spend it on something nice. After all, you weren't counting on that money anyway, right? Think of it this way. If you receive a $5,000 bonus and decide to remodel the kitchen with that money, you made a choice. If you invest those $5,000, they generate $200 per year of passive income. In 10 years, with compound interest, those $5,000 transform into more than $10,000. In 20 years, more than $20,000. In 30 years, more than $50,000. That kitchen remodel that gave you satisfaction for a few months cost $50,000 in future wealth building. I'm not saying to never spend money on things you like. I'm saying to understand the true cost. When you see the real trade-off, you make different decisions. Here's the reality nobody wants to admit. The average American will earn about $2 million over a working lifetime. And most will end up completely dependent on Social Security, which pays on average about $1,800 per month. 45 years of work and almost nothing to show for it because every dollar that came in immediately went out the other door. The crossover point offers a different path. It's not easy, I won't lie to you about that. It requires discipline, consistency, and the ability to say no to things everyone around you is buying. However, it's a clear path. You save aggressively, invest consistently, reduce expenses intelligently, and let the math do its work. The lines always cross. They always cross for those who stay in the game long enough. And when they finally cross, you'll wake up on some random Tuesday, check your accounts, and realize your money is finally working harder than you are. That's the moment when everything changes. That's the moment when you win. So now you know. You know there's a calculable moment, a specific point in time when work stops being necessity and becomes choice. You know this moment isn't reserved for millionaires or those born with privilege. It's for those who understand the mathematics and act according to it. The question that remains is, what are you going to do with this information? Will you continue living on autopilot, spending every dollar that comes in, hoping that somehow in the end everything works out? Or will you calculate your number today, draw up a real plan, and start pulling the levers within your reach? Let me ask you some questions I want you to seriously reflect on. How much of your life are you willing to trade for things that don't matter? How many years will you spend waking up for a job that drains you when you could be doing something that truly has meaning for you? If you knew that reducing your expenses by $500 per month could give you 5 years of your life back, would you do it? If you knew that increasing your investments now could free you a decade earlier, would you find a way to earn more or spend less? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're real decisions you need to make if you want your life to be different from most. Here's what I want you to do now. Grab a paper, open a spreadsheet, do whatever, and calculate your crossover point. Find out how much you need. See where you are today. Look at the gap and decide how long you're willing to let that gap exist. Because every month that passes without you acting is one more month away from freedom. Every purchase you make without thinking about the real cost is time being sold. You have the power to change your trajectory now, today, at this exact moment. The question is whether you'll use that power or let it slip through your fingers while life passes by. If this video changed the way you see money and freedom, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notification bell because I spend my time creating content that challenges the way you think about wealth building. It's not about getting rich quick or wild schemes. It's about understanding the rules of the game nobody taught you and using those rules in your favor. And if you want to continue learning about how to truly build wealth, how to make financial decisions that really matter, and how to accelerate your journey to the crossover point, there are other videos on this channel that will further expand your capacity for reflection on these topics. Each video is a piece of the puzzle that brings you closer to the life you want to live. The lines will cross. They always cross for those who stay in the game. The only question is when. I believe in you. I truly do. Because I know that everyone watching this regardless of where you're starting from, regardless of the challenges you're facing right now, has the ability to create something better. We all carry battles nobody sees. We all face obstacles that feel insurmountable some days. But here's what I've learned. We're capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. You have skills, talents, and potential that are waiting to be fully realized. And when you use those abilities not just to improve your own life, but to lift others up along the way, that's when real wealth happens. Not just financial wealth, but the kind of wealth that comes from knowing you made a difference. Keep studying, keep learning, keep pushing yourself to understand more about how money works, how the world works, how you work. Education doesn't stop when you leave school. In fact, that's when it really begins. Every book you read, every conversation you have, every lesson you learn from your mistakes, all of it compounds just like your investments do. And over time, you become someone who doesn't just survive, but thrives. Before you go, I want you to think about something. Think about the possibility of subscribing to this channel. Think about the value of surrounding yourself with ideas that challenge you, that push you, that remind you of what's possible. Watch more content here. Dive deeper into these concepts, because the person you're becoming is shaped by the information you consume and the actions you take. And I want to be part of that journey with you. The lines will cross. They always do. The only question is when. And that answer is in your hands.